Hello, Tom Levecchia here with the latest edition of the New Theory podcast. And I just want to take a second to thank each and every listener. If you're listening and you stumbled across the show, or you're somebody who subscribes, we and I do appreciate everything. We're really starting to cook. We're really starting to get some great traffic. We recently again had our pizza episode go viral worldwide. Got over 10 million impressions and received worldwide press. It's pretty cool. Get some cool notoriety. So all I ask is if you can like, comment, and or subscribe to wherever you're listening. And today's guest is a very special guest. And I'm really excited about this one because I think there's a kind of a few spaces that are really popping right now. And obviously you're crypto and all that kind of fun stuff, but I'm more of a touch, feel, taste kind of guy. And I like even more the compliance and reliability around certain areas, because it's almost like you don't go after necessarily the gold. You set up the hotel and all the other fun stuff around it, which makes you rich. So this particular guest is exciting because he is the CEO of DigiPath. His name is Todd Denkin, and DigiPath is a publicly traded company. So they do independent cannabis testing, cannabis analytics, and they support the cannabis industry best practices for reliable testing, data acquisition, and analysis. And this is not something to be taken lightly because, if it's illegal, obviously you go to your dope man or you go to your, dealer and you kind of pick up your fix. But, to get it reliably through appropriate means is no joke and requires a set of standards that are high. And in order to do that, you need to be pretty badass. And that's what Todd and his company is. Todd Denkin, welcome to the New Theory podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for that incredible intro. I'm looking forward to being badass.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So let's get to it. So cannabis is, legal in certain states, and you have medicinal and you have some recreational. And give us where DigiPath kind of comes in. So I wanted us to focus on Nevada for a moment, because I think that's where you guys hang your hat. So give us kind of like the background and where you guys kind of fit in the process.
Sure. So about 4 years ago, Nevada went legal with a medical marijuana program, and DigiPath's history was in the digital pathology space, and we used that lab experience to apply for a testing license here in Nevada. We've been open for 4 years, and what's been happening over the last 4 years is lots and lots and lots of cultivators, dispensaries have opened up, and an industry has birthed, excuse me, if you will. And if it wasn't for testing, none of this would be able to happen, because everything, Nevada passed a law, much like other states are passing laws, that everything that is in a dispensary and is sold to the public must be tested. And so people always say, well, what do you test for? Well, we test for potency, which is the cannabinoid and the terpene content, known as the chemo profile. And then we test for safety. We test for pesticides and heavy metals. We do a very intense microbiological screen and test for all kinds of stuff like coliforms and E. coli and salmonella and yeast and mold and total aerobic bacteria, gram-negative bacteria. And we also test for 4 species of aspergillus, which is a very bad bacteria that you shouldn't be smoking. Nevada really did it right. They put a program in place that is safe for the consumer. And if we look at a little bit of Nevada's history, they have a history of licensing, right? Licensing everything and things and regulating everything from, booze to gambling to prostitution, and now cannabis.
Beautiful.
It's been a fun ride watching the, growing with not only the industry, but growing with, the governmental agency, which is the Department of Taxation, who regulates the program here.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, so let's just say I am a dispensary and I'm a grower. What's your model? Who pays you?
It's the cultivator. The cultivator has to sell their product to the dispensaries, and then the dispensary sells it to the product, or to the public. And the cultivators, they also sell their products to producers, guys who make edibles and extracts and lotions and potions and pills, right? So all of that stuff has to be tested prior to leaving the cultivation, And then if it goes to the producer and the producer makes something from it, then that has to be tested to ensure that everyone's doing everything and not adding something strange to it, right? So it's the cultivators and the producers who are our customers.
Got it. Now, if this were to go recreational use in Nevada, let's say, we'll keep it simple.
Well, it has.
It is recreational too.
Well. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, sweet. Okay, so, and I'm not a big pot smoker myself, but cool, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's an important question. Let's say I go for a prescription, or I go to get it recreationally. Is the criteria or the testing the same and or different, and why versus the medical channel versus recreational channel?
Sure. First, let me quash the myth that there's no difference between medical and recreational marijuana. It's the same marijuana, the same plant, the same everything. As just an example of that, in Colorado, when they started the recreational program, the medical growers were like, well, what do you mean? We have to grow medical on one side and recreational on the other side, but it's literally the same plant, the same everything. I always say that it's all medical, whether you use it for fun or not.
Right? Exactly.
It's all medical. But to answer your question, the rules are exactly the same. It was a very smart move because we already had a very well-established medical program that was run by the Department of Health. And then the Department of Taxation came in and took over the recreational program, and now it's combined into one, and Department of Taxation runs everything. But they adopted the exact same medical cannabis rules for recreational. So it is very strict on both sides. Whereas in Colorado, they recently just started testing for medical. And when recreational first started, they had to do some mild tests on recreational. They had it a little backwards over there.
Okay. And then was it interesting enough is you guys started, went public in 2012, and you process over, 15,000 samples for 100 growers, 50 producers licensed in the state. So has Nevada, kind of had that spike, and all the players are kind of there, and it's going to I don't want to say flatline, but it's going to grow slowly in usage? Or do we just not even see the beginning of, utilization in Nevada, and you have huge upside just in Nevada alone?
Yes, it's the latter. What happened is they wanted to start off slow. They didn't limit the amount of growers, but they did limit the amount of dispensaries.
Okay.
So there were 60 dispensaries originally, and they gave licenses out to about 120 or so cultivators. And that was back in 2015. So over the last couple of years, they've adjusted and really studied the market, and they have they opened up, actually it's happening, I think it just ended actually, right at the end of November, the additional licensing space for somebody who already has cultivation and someone who already has a dispensary. You can open up more square footage or another location. That's all they're going to do until the next legislative session for another year. But, we anticipate that the number of dispensaries will at least or almost double, and the same thing for the cultivations and the producers, because there's about 3 million people that live in Nevada. About 1 million people voted for legalization of marijuana, but 40 million people a year visit.
Yeah.
About 4 million people a month, and they has to be able to satisfy that demand.
So I understand your model. Now, I don't know if this has changed, but I remember reading or seeing on a CNBC where a grower who's making millions of dollars had to have the Brinks truck pick it up and store it for him because he could have put it in the bank. A, has that changed? And B, are you allowed to bank appropriately, or do you have to do alternative things as well?
Yeah, banking is a big, big problem. We don't have a bank account. So okay. It is very strange. We've been kicked out of a couple of banks, and we're on the laboratory side, so we don't make it or produce it or sell it or market it or anything like that. We simply provide a service, right? So, but the banks didn't want our money either because our money comes from cultivators, right?
Got it.
So yes, it is a big, big problem. we just elected a new governor here in Nevada, Steve Sisolak, who has really promised to make banking and banking the marijuana industry a top priority. So we'll see what happens there, but it is a big problem. I know that now that California is going legal, and they have 40 million people that live there and about 100 million people that visit California, and they have to be able to bank this industry. It's just silly. It's, we're all following state rules. We're all, it's a very highly regulated situation, and we have to follow so many rules all the time, which is good, but it stops right up at the bank. And the irony of the whole thing is that we pay our taxes in cash, right? So what do you think the state of Nevada does? They take that cash and they put it into their bank account.
Interesting. Well, okay, so you bring a great question. So if I'm a cultivator, do I show up with a duffel bag, or you have to bank in out overseas, or a non-backed federal bank? Like, how does it work?
No, it's a duffel bag.
Interesting.
It's literally a duffel bag. It's funny because when we pick up cash from customers, and we're on the low end of picking up the cash. Do you know what I mean? Because we're just a service. I don't go out and buy 50 pounds of cannabis, right, to put in my store, whereas someone else will. But still, I mean, you're in a room with a cash counter and two people, and you feel like you're in the Scarface movie. It's kind of what it feels like.
Wow, but you know what though, and I like that. I'll tell you why. Because sometimes people see this as like a little gray area. I actually see gold, because once the banks accept it, which they will, or maybe it might be, hey, I'm a state bank, and the states might send up their own kind of state-funded bank that don't take federal funds. I mean, it may not be backed or whatever. There's workarounds, or cryptocurrency might come into play. My point being is, just the virtue of the back end of it, when that gets worked out, I see it being some upside. Is that part of the discussion with stakeholders and shareholders, or is that more of like an ancillary thought at this point?
I think you're absolutely right on target. This is a huge opportunity for the banking industry to really capitalize, because they're in a situation where they can come on board and they can make the rules. When we first started this back in 2015 here in Nevada, Nevada State Bank said, they had a very progressive president, and he said, I'm going to bank the cannabis industry. And literally, 40 people, took millions and millions and millions of dollars and put it in their bank. And, they were running it very regulated. It was a huge ordeal just to deposit money and to take out money. But we were thinking, hey, this is great. At least they put some regulations in order. At least we can do this. And then, the guy who was in charge of all of this, the president of the bank, got another job, got a big offer for a big cultivation company in Colorado, and he left. And as soon as he left, they made us take all the money out of the bank. Well, actually, what they said was, you can continue to write checks off your deposited money, but you can't deposit any more money.
So you were limited.
Yeah.
All right.
But I do think it's a huge opportunity, and I was just having this conversation the other day, where I'm surprised. I just can't believe that a couple of billionaires just don't get together and form a bank, right? And insure it themselves, and do it that way. I just don't. There has to be something that's going on, but it is a problem. There are lots and lots of people trying to work on a solution, whether it's cryptocurrency, whether it's some sort of veil on top of a bank account that has highly secure and regulated counting of the money. Whatever it happens, it has to happen. And you're right, it will be a big opportunity for whoever does it.
Okay, so you're in Nevada. You picked the right horse, which is great. And so I'm starting to get a better feel for your business model. I kind of understood it before, but now I'm getting a little deeper. So is the plan to go like super, super deep in Nevada and then max out and then go, hey, California, Nevada, I know New Jersey's flirting with recreational. What's the growth look like? What's the growth strategy for DigiPath?
Yeah, that's a great question. Daddy always said, take something complex, make it simple, and then repeat until rich. So that's what we've done. We've taken something very complex. We have a multi-million-dollar lab here that and 19 people working here. They're analytical chemists and microbiologists. And now we're in our repeat until rich phase. We're going to take everything that we've learned here in Nevada. We have a beautiful lab that, we just went through ISO certification, which is now mandatory in cannabis laboratories around the country. So we have a step ahead of everybody. And our goal is to now go to these mandatory cannabis friendly states. So when I say mandatory, it's just got to be mandatory testing or else there's no business model, right?
Correct.
Because the cultivator doesn't really want to know if they're not doing things right. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So California is on the horizon. We plan on opening up in Humboldt County sometime in 2019. We're exploring other opportunities throughout California, and we're also looking at some international situations where we think the business is going as well.
Okay, so I'm just looking at, and here's some clicking. Hope you don't mind. I'm just checking out DigiPath, and as I know you're publicly traded, so I'm fully familiar with stuff you could say and stuff you can't, right? So we're pretty educated, but we want to deep dive for a second. I'm looking at it says September 30th, 2017, 1898. I'm assuming that's close to $2 million. But you have a valuation that is just 3x of gross. I mean, I'm seeing like a pretty big upside. So did you get like dinged or just people kind of sitting back, hanging out and saying, hey, what's happening with the banks? Like something's going on in terms of, the fundamentals of the philosophy. So walk us through that.
Yeah, sure. So we are completely undervalued, which is a good thing, to be in the market currently, because it's a good opportunity for investors, for sure. We have had some steady growth since our beginning. And then last January, after the Department of Taxation took over, the services that the Department of Health was doing, they came in and we got suspended for a couple of days because a couple of clients complained that we failed them. So every time that you fail somebody, they can't sell their product.
Yeah.
Right. So we failed a couple of clients. I'll try to make this really long story really short.
Yeah.
And then the state came in and they gave us an audit, and they didn't like one of the things that we were doing. We were doing something called pooling, which is completely acceptable in the world of analytical chemistry. We got approval from our ISO certification auditor, but we didn't ask the state directly if we could do it, and they asked us to stop. So when that happens, people get scared. And now this is back in January.
Yeah.
So we, of course, we're a public company. We had to announce it, and we took a little bit of a hit, but we've been open. We were only suspended for a couple of days, and the best thing about it was that we became really good friends and really good working colleagues with the Department of Taxation. In fact, we've been helping them change some rules. We've been helping them educate them on our pesticide analysis and how best to do that. So even though it's created something really nice on a local standpoint, we definitely took a hit back in January. But if you look at our financials, we show some steady growth and everything is good. We're not a promoting company,
Yeah.
We don't really spend a lot of time or money promoting. We really keep our nose to the grindstone and try to produce revenue, because in the long term, that's what the investor looks at, is revenue, right?
Correct.
So we've really just we have a great staff now. We hired a bunch of new people. We have a few PhDs and some master degrees and a bunch of, like I said, analytical chemists and microbiologists that are really on track now to take what we've done and now duplicate it elsewhere, because the last 8 months we've been going through ISO certification, which is a big bear. And basically what that is that validates everything that you're doing, right? It says it's a international standard organization that comes in and says, this is what you say you're doing. This is exactly what you're doing. And if they find that what you're doing is incorrect or there's a better way to do it, they advise you on that as well. So it's been quite a journey, and it is a really good time to be a DigiPath investor because, like you say, we're undervalued. We're about ready to open in other states, and timing is good. The market has been up and down over the last couple of years, especially the cannabis side. But if you really look at what's happening in the public sector of the cannabis space, you see more and more folks seeing the money that is being generated by a lot of these publicly traded cannabis companies, and institutional investors are now getting curious, right? About a year ago, they were, yeah, well, okay, we'll see how it goes. But now everybody wants to get involved, with the success of GW Pharmaceutical and Tilray and all the things that are really over valuated, similar to what happened in the dot-com days.
Okay, and then so to kind of go to your responsibility, because as a CEO, as you have your employees you need to lead, and you're somewhat of a salesperson, if you will, to probably brought into larger deals and that kind of fun stuff. But as you know, a big chunk of your role is working with the financial community. I notice you guys are on the Pink Sheets OTC market. So what's the plan there? Obviously, once you start getting valued appropriately and start raising, is there like, hey, you're going to hang out in OTC because you're happy there regardless of the foreseeable future, or would you like to go on a bigger exchange to get more validity? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so ultimately we'd like to get on the NASDAQ, but they have lots of restrictions with cannabis companies.
Correct.
So I think over time, as we show more value, as our stock price increases, and we show more revenue, it's just the natural path. We're not going to be satisfied just to stay where we are. Our goal is to become the Quest, if you will, of the cannabis space. There is really no 900-pound gorilla in this space, so we're going to just claim that and implement.
I love it, Todd. I love it, and I think what is special about this play, because I personally do not smoke marijuana. However, as a business person, I think you're just scratching the surface, because once you get into like CBD and once you get into extractions, and that has to be tested and pharmaceutical grade, and once pharmaceuticals get behind it, I mean, if you have like the gold standard, or if you have a standard that's already kind of being done, just that process alone. And the other thing is, and I'm guessing just like anything else, you have the growers, and there'll be like some growers that'll go public, and some will do great and some will do poor. You have some retailers that'll do great and some will do poor. But like the digipaths specifically are going to have to be there, because you're going to bottleneck, not in a bad way, meaning, but from a safety perspective, the testing. So how do you validate your value? Because I'm like in a good way. I'm scratching. And full disclosure, I don't own any stock. I may own in the future.
Right.
Publicly traded stuff here. So I love it. So how do you validate? Because I'm looking at this more, and you got to forgive me if I'm wrong, but I'm looking at it from like a tech valuation. Here's what I mean is you kind of have, it looks like some proprietary stuff, or at the very least non-proprietary stuff that you're doing better than other people because you have a standard, right? And to me, that makes it proprietary. And like, it almost deserves more of a tech valuation. And if I saw a 3x on gross off of a tech stock, I'd push all in. So what are your thoughts like on the valuation, currently, and is it more, a tech play, or no, hey, Tom, maybe I would measure more with pharmaceuticals. What's your benchmarking from your perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I agree with you. Testing is, and it really is the gatekeeper, of the industry. Yeah. And the proof of that is what you see happening in California right now. So in California, there's over 5,000 licensed cultivators. 5,000. Okay, in Nevada, just as a comparison, there's 120. Okay, so wow. It's quite a difference. In Nevada, there's 10 laboratories that do what I do, and in California, there's 22 to handle over 5,000. So it is a big bottleneck. There's a 2-week to a 2-month wait for testing results, and just as a comparison, there we turn over results in 72 hours.
Wow.
So right, so you're right. There is a big bottleneck, and it's just a matter of getting open. What people, in my opinion, don't see as in the investment side is that we're not a sexy cultivation where we went out and spent $20 million on a 100,000 square foot building, and we have, you know, 40,000 marijuana plants that we're going to sell for $1,000 or $2,000 a piece, right? So the visions of grandeur when you're looking at a cultivation are huge, right? It's very sexy. You see the marijuana growing from, from seedling to, to tree, right? And it's an exciting place. And from a dispensary standpoint, that's where the public touches the actual product, right? So that's another sexy, retail, lots of dollars churning, and you see that. Whereas the testing business, unless you've seen a testing lab, which most people have not, right? And unless you really understand the process of what cannabis has to go through in order to get to the dispensaries, then you don't really know anything about laboratory testing. So we're right now just we're on an education mode. You know, we want to teach everybody what it is that we do, because like you said, this is an exciting place to be. You know, a highly regulated industry, and we're the gatekeepers. If you have to get it past my building in order to get it to the shelf, right? That's a very important role to play, and it's very necessary. And you know, once you go through the numbers of possible revenue when we open up new labs, we have people calling us all the time that want to open new labs, because if you can keep your lab to capacity, you know, it's really becomes an ATM machine.
And would you see yourself doing it as a service for other labs, like kind of like a, for lack of a better word, white label, or may you, when you grow, acquire the labs? Because I want to get a feel, because again, I'm interested. I want to get a feel for, because it will grow, and how you plan to scale. Because we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs, and the bitch is the scale. So give us the scaling strategy.
Sure. So ultimately, we believe that when cannabis becomes federally legal, that will be really the true time where a Quest-like scale can take place, right? Because Quest, the beauty of Quest and LabCorp, you know, they have all of these drop-off locations, and then they send everything to a central location, and then the central location has the 20 or 30 or 40 machines and the 20 or 30 or 40, technicians, and they run everything in one location, and that's how they scale, right?
Correct.
Well, in the cannabis space, we can't do that because you can't cross state lines with any product, even though, what we end up putting in our analytical instrumentation is a little 1 gram vial, usually with some ethanol, and it's nobody can get high from any of it, right? It's really just a sample that goes into a machine that's been extracted, just specifically for what we're testing for. So we can't even ship those across a state line because of the presence of the Schedule 1 THC, right? So the only way to scale now is very capital intensive, and that's to go build labs in other locations, right? It's about a $2.5 million investment, depending on where you are and what rules have to be followed. But yeah, it's very capital intensive, and but there's people like you that see the promise and see the sexiness, if you will, of the laboratory side of things, and they want to get involved. We have lots of we're a publicly traded company. We have thousands of investors, right? So there are the folks who do see this side of the space like you do.
But I think you're going to agree, although the capital intensive portion is difficult as a CEO, because you have to always make sure you have enough revenue and then enough line of credit and all that kind of fun stuff to operate. But also, I like the high barrier to entry, because let's just say federal tomorrow, Trump waves a magic wand and says, hey, it's legal in 50 states. If the barrier to entry is low, Quest just has to buy a few machines and instead of a few drop boxes. But the fact that it's decentralized, they can't, because it's the antithesis of their model, versus if you're like, hey, I just need the money, but I know where to build and what to build and when, and you're good to go. So I think that barrier to entry protects Digipath IP and success. Is that a fair statement? Or
of course. No, that's very fair. Yeah, it not only protects our ability to get into the space because we can go raise money when necessary, right? Um, but you're right, it does keep out the bad players. It does keep out the guys who don't have the money to go buy the real equipment to do the real stuff and hire the real people. And ultimately, it protects the consumer, and that's really what it's all about.
And that's where, and the funny thing is, the compliance is actually more stringent in a sense where you can't do anything now, so therefore it's super stringent. Versus once it gets regulated officially, you're kind of ready to go. If anything, you probably write, like you said, kind of some of the protocols. So is that maybe another opportunity as well for you guys, where hey, it's fully legal everywhere in terms of federal, and you guys are the market leader. I'm assuming they might even, again, the federal may come to you for guidelines on testing and so forth. Is that an opportunity as well? Maybe not financial per se, but from a policy standpoint, is that maybe an opportunity as well?
100%. Our chief science officer, Dr. Cindy Orser, she is a PhD in plant genetics and microbiology and has a resume way too long to spew out today, but with 18 patents and 45 published papers. She's a very well-respected scientist in the cannabis space. She's been with us since the very beginning. And we have advised other states on regulations. And we have worked with the attorneys generals around the country of states that are exploring cannabis legalization. Several politicians from several states, including Tennessee and Louisiana and Washington and Oregon, have been to our lab and have really embraced what it is Nevada is doing. Even though it's very strict, most of the government officials want to keep it strict, right? And they like it like that. We're also working with governments in other countries that have inquired on what our opinions are on what is good about Nevada's laws, what is bad, and what they should explore and work towards in their countries. And Cindy also is a member of the pesticide committee in Colorado, and also has been working with the state of California to help them with regulations as well. So yes, it is a good opportunity to work with local and federal governments when they ask, but the feds kind of seem to stay away and don't really have, they don't really, they're afraid, you know what I mean? They're afraid of, am I making the right decision? Am I making the wrong decision? Because lots of people vote, right? And they don't know who they're pissing off. So the feds seem to back away until the states need them,
Which is interesting, which again provides additional opportunity. Okay, so if you want to check it out, OTC Market, DIGP, you can see the history, you can see the news, the financials, all the information there, which I love. As an OTC company, and this is kind of actually one last question, actually,
Sure.
before we sign off. As an OTC company, you don't have to. I know on the regulatory side for the testing is really regulated, but on the financial side, you're doing a lot more than you need to, which is a good thing from a financial reporting perspective. For OTC markets, you can kind of be like, hey, here's what's going on, and kind of leave it at that. But you almost over-report. So walk us through that, because I really like that aspect as well.
Yeah, we do. We think it's important because we're the industry that we're in and because of the scrutiny that we're under locally. We like to take that to the next level to show not only the feds that we do everything right, but to also ensure the local authorities that, even though we follow all of your rules, we ask permission and not forgiveness on everything that we do, right? And it's the same thing, with the SEC. We're not going to mess around with the SEC. We're already in an interesting part of the industry, and we're going to follow all of the rules and do everything right, because when you shine light, you bring heat, and we shine light all the time, and we welcome the heat. We are completely transparent, and that's a good thing. In fact, I even use that when I go and get customers. They ask us about our transparency. I said, look, we're public. You can read anything because we report everything, and it's very important. And it gives shareholder confidence, and that's the key.
I love it. How can we find Digipeth?
Oh, easily. Digipath.com, digipath.com, or you can check out digipathlabs.com, which is spelled the same with labs.com at the end. Digipath is our public company site. Digipath Labs is more of our retail laboratory site. And you can check us out on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and we're everywhere. We try to educate the industry because good education creates really good legislation. And that's what we always hope for.
I love it. Todd, listen, you're very generous with your time. You're running a publicly traded company, so we appreciate it. Check it out, folks. This is something we're going to keep track of because we want to be able to say we're the first that, want to be the first people say you heard it here. So, Todd, thank you for being on the New Theory podcast.
All right, Tom, thank you. I appreciate you.
Be well.